passionate about Cleveland sports.
He's going in! Touchdown!
Browns, Indians, Cavs, the Big Ten, and more.
Cleveland is a city of champions once again!
Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and beyond.
A swing and a drive! To deep right!
Here are your hosts, Andy Billman and Jarid Watson.
And we are live on Facebook and YouTube. Hello and welcome. Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and beyond. He's Andy Billman. I'm Jarid Watson, and this podcast is brought to you by Waiting for Next Year. Check them out. Original Cleveland sports reporting at waitingfornextyear.com. Well, big Hollywood type show today, folks. Lots to discuss. Cue the music. Welcome back, Rashard Higgins, baby.
Yes.
I'm excited about this. He had four receptions last season. All of them were impactful, if I remember correctly. We'll get into that. When we say he's back, well, he never really left, but it felt like he was on his way out the door. I'm glad he's not. I'm surprised he's not. So again, lots to talk about with that. Higgins, he signed that one-year contract to come back to Cleveland. The Browns also pick up fifth-year options for Myles Garrett and David Njoku. And drum roll, please. Everyone who counts as a Browns fan, for the most part, is very happy with the NFL draft. We're going to recap and discuss that in detail. Also, Major League Baseball. Is it getting closer? Are we going to start? How about the NBA? Well, apparently, some think testing is key. We'll discuss that. And finally, Ron Harper, former Cleveland Cavalier, says hello, gives his thoughts on the shot. This is something I don't even want to talk about, but we're going to do it. I'm going to probably get a little bit sick and nauseous as we do. But anyways, during the Last Dance documentary. That's where he showed up, by the way, not on the show, in the documentary. One at which I'm not watching. Harper may not have agreed with letting just a tad. But first, Hollywood coming back to Berea and your Cleveland Browns.
Cleveland Browns.
Hello, everybody. What a week of where I always said we were talking about the draft. The Browns, as Jared and I were just speaking about before we came on the air, they like to dump load things in bunches. And so the headline for this week is Hollywood Higgins. Hollywood Higgins coming back. He had such a strange season last year. Jared hit upon it. It feels good. Just a quick depth of this is so simple. And people who listen to this podcast, listen to me, will know where I'm going. To have someone like that now as a backup, as a third wide receiver, makes so much sense. This team is so thin after Landry and Odell Beckham. To have someone like that, Jared, who can play, who you can count on, who Baker likes, makes so much sense. It makes everything around that signing. It makes the draft even feel more homey. Rashard Higgins is well liked in Cleveland. It made a lot of sense. Myles Garrett and Njoku we'll get into too, and then everybody, even outside of Cleveland, really enjoyed the draft. So my overall picture here, before we go down to Higgins and Njoku and everybody else, this has been a very positive week for the Browns. It's amazing. They've come really full circle where we were doubting, we were wondering about analytics. They have gotten off to it again. We learned this last year, but it has that feel right now, a lightning start PR-wise. Spring is feeling really good if you're a Browns fan. It's hard to be upset. We'll get into one or a couple things I know people debate about, but truthfully, Jared, if you're a Browns fan and you're feeling down or you're not thinking that the Browns are going to you're not feeling good about the team, I don't know what to say, because I thought the Browns really did hit every note. And the big word that I've heard other people use, so I will use this term too, the Browns come off as very thoughtful, educated, and smart. All these things that have been done with very good calculation. I do think Garrett took too long, but whatever, I'm going to put that aside for today. Even all these moves, it made good calculations and made good sense.
Okay, so let's start with this Hollywood Higgins re-signing. The money, can't complain.
Right.
That's a cheap deal. That tells you that. Let me ask you this: does that tell you that the market really wasn't out there for Rashard, and he knew that? I would assume.
I think
because last year was not a year that he can't use last year as an example. Granted, like I said, 4 receptions, 1 was a touchdown, 2 for first downs. I think another one that had impact. I don't remember, which just goes to show you that the kid, he matters when he's on the field and when the ball's thrown his way.
Higgins,
go ahead with that question that I asked. It's
good, steady receiver. Do you really want to go to Jacksonville, which was one rumor? Do you really want to go to some other place where you may not win and you may not get the career your jumpstart you're needing? Let's just all be fair about one thing. Hollywood Higgins did this, yes, because he wanted to play with Baker, yes, because of all that.
Mm-hmm.
But Jared's hitting on a point. The market wasn't there. And to be honest with you, this will, if he executes the way he can, it will get him a much larger contract next year.
And that's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. This is, I will say,
he's sniffing 2018 is what he's,
yeah, exactly. And I think if Higgins does the right things, he could have a very nice free agency year the next year. Now, will the Browns bring him back? That's for another show. I don't think so with the current wide receiver core, but that's next year and this is this year. This year, this move made a lot of sense.
Right.
This is a move that should have been done, but hey, because of all the turmoil at Dorsey, I don't mind this one coming so late. I'm just happy because the wide receiver core is going to drive me crazy. And now that I see Higgins and I know that he's there, everything else to me, Jared, now settles out. Because now I know who's going to be plugged in case something happens. And I know in case they need to go 3 wide, I know Higgins will be out there. That just takes away my worry about depth on wide receiver. It really kind of goes away. Because I'm not going to complain about the other guys now. Because those are 4th, 5th, and 6th guys, and they shouldn't be on the field.
For the past couple of weeks, Andy, we were treating it like this wide receiver core was literally Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. Hopefully, if he isn't traded, right? Which we knew that it made 0 sense to trade Odell. So we still were thinking, okay, solid for wide receiver, but very thin.
Very thin.
Answers that question. We were not talking about Hollywood Higgins. We did not bring up Richard regarding this team for the fact that we had no reason to believe that he was going to come back. New regime, new systems, new expectations, new coaches. And here we are. Now, this rolls me into this one, Andy. And it's something that as soon as this signing happened, I reached out to some other folks in Cleveland sports media. And I said, here's my thoughts on this. What do you think? These two things popped out in my mind, which is one, you're getting 3 guys back on a regime that they didn't really perform last year. Higgins, Vernon, and Njoku, right? You have those 3, and they were hype names. All 3 are very hype names that had very low impact overall throughout the season last year. 2, they're all returning with a brand new regime. These aren't their guys. So both of those things stand out to me with one, it doesn't sound cutesy. It doesn't sound like they're making these moves and they're being cutesy about it, which is always my fear when you do something like this where you're going against the grain, right? You're going against the grain by re-signing a Vernon and not finding your own guy. You're going against the grain by bringing back a wide receiver who didn't have any impact and a tight end when you just signed another tight end. You're going against the grain. Got it. I noticed that, but it doesn't feel like they're trying to be smarter than everyone else or that they're being cute with these moves. And this leads me back to the other thought, which is you brought it up a good point earlier that these moves have been calculated. They've been smart. The way that it's going, the words that I was thinking about as I was sitting on my couch prior to starting this episode was that it feels like there's a lot of emotional maturity and emotional intelligence in that room, that the combination of Barry and Stefanski, these are guys that are not allowing egos to get in the way. They're not trying to act like one knows better than the other. These are guys who understand what's the word? Well, the word that stands out to me right now is something that I actually am reading a lot about in stoicism. They're very stoic. They are very purpose driven in their moves that we have seen to this point. I cannot say whether or not this is going to translate into success on the field. You can't say it. No one can. And we've got a 20-year history saying that it won't, no matter who it is. But I will not get my expectations up. While I will not do that, I will at least acknowledge that I like what I am seeing. Is that fair?
Again, like what I'm seeing. I'm going to break it down this way. I'm going to take all these moves different. Myles Garrett getting the 5th-year deal is great. He's going to make a lot of money next year. He's going to make about $15 million. So let's get him off the table because really he's the back page story. Okay, let's go to the other 3 you're mentioning. Rashard Higgins made a lot of sense for all those things I just mentioned. Is very calculated, is very smart. And, they did a nice job bringing him in. Barry, and along with Sashi and those guys, brought Higgins in through the draft. So there's a tie there. Makes sense. Vernon, to me, I'm more on the fence about, but I get it. And here's why I get it. Because they added another defensive end. They've added some things around that they're hoping. And what they're basically saying is like, look, do we really want to take a chance on Clowney? We waited out and we decided because Vernon's contract runs out next year, we're going to just hope that something produces out of Vernon. And if we don't, we have another guy now in place who can come in and make moves in case Vernon does shit the bed. And Chad, and that guy, Chad, I can't remember his last name, out of Miami, did prove some things. Chad Thomas.
Yes.
Thomas did prove some things on the field. And Njoku, to me, is the different one, is the one outlier. I have been critical of him. I am not a big Njoku fan. Njoku, though, is going to get one last chance here.
There's no downside to that move. You've got a tight end that you drafted, right, and a guy that you signed. There's no downside.
No. Doesn't mean there's downside. Is correct. You're
trying to get trade value out of Njoku at this point, is my thought.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, again, I'm not going to say it's a negative move. Well, all I'm going to say is this: I just don't think Njoku, to me, has earned as much as other people do. While that said, they picked up his contract. It's an easy contract to get out of. It's not a big deal. It's fine. Let's see what Njoku can do. I'm not going to hold my breath with him. Vernon, I'm interested to see, because Vernon was so shitty. You got to wonder if it's an aberration. And Higgins, we already discussed at length. So, I mean, let's really see what these guys can do. But they're smart. They're calculated. I agree with Jared. Even with me being negative on Njoku, I get it. It's not weird. I get it. It makes sense. Like, it's not – all these moves make sense. I mean, I agree with Njoku, but it makes sense. I'm not going to get harping negatively on it.
They let's talk about the calculations and the moves in regard to how this plays out to the benefit of Barry and Stefanski and even DePodesta. And that is, one, it gives them the breathing room that they need regarding the players that they have and filling in the holes that they feel that they need. It gives them the ability to say that they didn't turn their back on certain players, that they actually did look for some value that they had in-house. And then 3, if it doesn't work out, well, those weren't my guys.
Those weren't my guys.
You didn't shoot yourself in the foot by let's say they bring in Clowney, and let's say they let go and Clowney doesn't work out. Well, what are you doing? You didn't try to fix what you had, and then you brought in something because you thought you knew better, and that didn't work out either. That's the way of the egos within the NFL? They are not making egocentric decisions, is what I'm seeing.
They're not trying to go boom or bust. And I was naive last year. Dorsey did too much boom or bust. Yeah. And he really did, if you think about it. And then really hammered home, the Freddie Kitchens hire was not a smart decision. And that just wrapped everything up. The biggest thing, too, here that DePodesta said from day one is this driven vision. And everybody's going to be in our vision and on plane. And so far, folks, not only is that vision being played out, that vision is being executed. Again, it reminds me of Phil Savage. Savage is the one guy who came through Cleveland where I don't think he actually did a terrible job. Dwight Clark didn't get a fair shake either. So Clark's the other guy. He just got booted because Butch Davis wanted to do his own thing. But that's for another podcast. But Phil Savage is the one where it's like, I even though it didn't work out for Phil, I thought Phil actually did a nice job. It just didn't happen to work. Brady Quinn failed. Some other just things just didn't quite work out. His big signing, Charles Bentley got injured on the first day of practice. Can't make that shit up. So some things that he did made sense. That's where I'm with this, Jared. For the first time since Phil Savage, I'm seeing things that are very structured. And unlike Dorsey, where Dorsey did hit big, but had to expend a lot to get big, in this case, the Browns didn't really spend a lot or use a lot of maneuvers to get to where they are. That's a credit and a kudos to this whole staff. Now, look, the players have to play and everything else, and now we get to let's get right to it. The biggest thing too was the draft, and we know the draft means everything to us as Browns fans. And I'm not going to do my Jared Judy rant, which I just hope I'm wrong on him and the Broncos get a dud, but I don't think we will. All that to be said, Even I, who said I might have taken him, am not naive. Jedrick Wills makes a lot of sense. Wills is a good player. Wills is an Alabama kid. Callahan, you went to your offensive your offensive line coach and said, hey, do you think this will work with Wills? Yes. They did smart things, Jared. They vetted things out. This draft felt that way from beginning to end, from Peoples-Jones to Wills. It all made sense.
No argument. Jedrick is a guy who Joe Thomas. I'm kind of backing into this. What makes me feel better about Jedrick? One, I knew he was. I had a feeling he was going to be the guy for the Browns.
You called it. By the way, you called it. Good job.
Well, it's the only one I've called. Don't worry. Don't give me. Listen, blind squirrel finds a nut. Everyone's
the Purdue blowout you called too, which was great. That helped me.
Wait, what's that?
The Purdue blowout, Ohio State in football.
I
love that call. That was cool. That was fun.
You threw me so far off. The thing that Joe Thomas made, I kept in my head thinking to myself, all right, so he's going to go from one side to the other of the line, right?
Yeah.
And we know that conversation has been had. How's he going to do that? And how long is it going to take him to adjust? Can he make the adjustment? And I was thinking to myself, well, how is he? So you're talking about a kid. Is he left-handed? Is he right-handed? He's been on one side, and now he's got to rely on, is his weak side going to be the guy who makes the outside move on him, right? But all of that was put to rest the more that I read regarding his ability to change direction.
Yep.
That in itself tells me, chill out. He'll adjust. If he's got the ankles, if he can change direction, he can play either side of the ball. Period. Not either side of the line.
Let's hit some strokes that Jared's hitting on here. You mentioned name Joe Thomas. So already too in this new regime, they are incorporating alums to come in here and feel a part of the organization.
You know, damn well I love that.
And we all love that as Clevelanders, but especially with Joe Thomas for what he played. The other big thing I was listening to, what Jared kind of alluded on, is Stefanski said they were blown away by his feet. They just thought his feet and the way he could turn was just something that you can't teach. A lot of people say he's got a bit of dog in him. They say he's got a feistiness to him, which we all love to hear.
Oh, he finishes. Yeah.
And by the way, let's just say it. He plays for Alabama. He played for Saban. He's been through some things. And when he was at right tackle at Alabama, he did cover the blind side as Tua throws left. So it isn't like he's a guy who's never done the blind side.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think Thomas's comments here, let's get to a couple of them. I went back. This is Joe Thomas quote. I went back and there was only one guy that stood out. He just popped off your screen. The technique he was using, the dominance, the finish, the change of direction, the explosion he had. That was Jedrick Wills. I mean, he went on several different interviews talking about the same thing. To what Jared's saying, to get someone from feedback like the Joe Thomas, to hear basically Stefanski, and Dee Podesta too. Dee Podesta, he was actually the top tackle on our board from the beginning. We were really excited, end quote. He basically got tipped off from the Browns. We don't think you're going to be a 10, but if you are, you are our guy. And by the way, as we did the podcast, we all watched live, that card got turned in like that. I mean, they didn't dick around.
No, they didn't.
They were ready to go.
Because I missed the reactions.
Yes.
I missed the reactions.
It was that quick. In fact, they couldn't even show the inner cameras of Barry and Stefanski because it got in so quickly. They came right back from they went right from the Henderson pick right to the Browns. They didn't have time. So it just tells you how confident they were. Now look, the draft broke out right for the Browns in their draft board, and we'll see over time if it plays out. But you got to be excited about this. And this kid, I heard him talk on KNR. I like how he talks. I like the fact, too, that Baker Mayfield's reaching out to him and talking to him. I like the fact, too, he's not cocky. He said, look, my biggest thing is I got to get adjusted to playing the left side of the line. But once I get adjusted to that, everything else will roll. So he knows what he's getting himself into. I just think the way he talks, the way he comes off about himself, he seems to have a very good understanding of what's ahead for him.
Priscilla and my wife and I watched him in the interviews that followed the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And we both looked at each other after the first time that we watched him speak. And we're like, I want to give that big motherfucker, a giant hug. Like he just looks like a nice guy that you'll want to hang out with and have around, and he's good. He just is the right personality, the right fit for that lot. You can tell why him and Joe Thomas already have rapport, right?
Yes.
Same cut from the same cloth, and you gotta love that.
Cut from the same cloth, has been in Cleveland, is still in Cleveland. Joe Thomas is not calling, from San Diego. He's there in town. He can give him some pointers, and that's what Will's brought up. Quote, "Call me." He's referencing Thomas. Thomas said, "Call me if you ever need any pointers." He knew I was going to be playing left tackle, and if I need any pointers, tips, or videos like that, he'll be there to help me out.
Yeah.
End quote. And by the way, I think
he can't wear 73 though. Coach Stefanski says no. Makes sense. The disciplinarian.
Let's get to that real quick.
I like that.
So Stefanski did not. I guess Thomas and Will's are because the name Hubbard wears 74, so Wills wants to wear 74 because that's his college number, but Hubbard's going to wear that, which is fine because that's the veteran thing. I totally get that.
Yeah.
So the next number up for him, he wanted 73, and I guess he and Joe talked, and Thomas said no problem. Stefanski then comes in and says, "Quote: This is on KNR. This is with Rizzo and Hammer. First of all, I think that's very gracious of Joe to offer that number, but I just didn't think that was the right thing to do for a bunch of reasons. And I told Jed that." End quote. That was the right call. That is the right move. I'm not going to overhype it because honestly, I think that stuff gets way too overfocused. I'll just leave it there. I think people overthink way too many things in life. If you want to wear 73, who gives a fuck? Just play well.
At the end of I know.
But it's the right move. Stefanski did the right thing there. And I think the big thing that Wills is really, I got really out of him was, again, like the biggest thing for me is getting comfortable at that tackle spot. He mentioned that time and time and time again. And he wants to prove people right. I just think, Jared, the more I listened to Wills talk, the more I could see the reaction. Baker was very excited. He reached out to him too already. Yeah. It just makes you feel good about that first pick. And then the next day, I love the Delpit move. I actually mentioned that a couple of times on here.
I kind of said, thank God.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, Delpit, look, this is typical draft stuff now.
Because let's just bring this up right now. I want to say this before we talk anymore. The secondary is already hurting. And I did hear one media member in Cleveland is rumoring that Talkie is on the block. So, well, Lord knows my opinion of that is it's way too early, and I don't even like that was a speculation that was thrown out there, but it's already out there.
Okay, real quickly, because now I got to go on that road. Is Taki's linebacker. Taki really stood out. Do you want to say
my bad quick? Because I was thinking Greedy Williams, so go ahead.
Is Greedy Williams the guy who's on the training block?
Nope. That was my own brain fart. So pretend that never happened.
But you make a good point because they did draft a kid Phillips at LSU, which we're gonna get to the LSU thing too.
Right.
And then the Michigan thing.
Yeah, but I wasn't even thinking linebacker. I literally in my brain put Taki at safety in my brain.
No, you're good.
Forgive me.
He's a linebacker. Taki last year. Now hearing that for a second. Let's go down. Then we'll go back to the draft.
Yeah.
Taki last year was a rookie, and I want to say that first, meaning I do think every rookie should get a second year. Okay. He stood out. He did not look good. He did not play well. I mentioned that to Jared, and we talked about this on the podcast weeks ago. Taki didn't play well. And I know he's a rookie, but he stood out. Greedy Williams didn't play well either, but Taki, they both stood out. And so to hear that Taki is on the trading block, I am not that shocked because, again, he did not play well last year. He didn't bring any impact on these games. He just didn't. And you know what? Neither Greedy Williams, but I'm sure with Greedy, they see more athleticism. Maybe they want to give him another chance.
Well,
Taki did stand out to me. He looked like
continuing on this side, continuing on linebacker. I will say this: if I'd had any knock on any of on the draft, I would say that. Well, it's not even a knock; it's just my thoughts. I thought they were going to focus more on linebacker, and I thought they would have done it a little bit earlier than they actually did.
Delpit
that
being there.
surprise you at all? It's because of the value. It's because of the value. They did. I mean, they did get a lot of value out of a lot of these picks. There were people. I mean, Donovan Peoples-Jones was, slid all the way to the 6th round. So,
yeah. Here's what I would say. I'm not, only because when Delpit started showing up the way he did in all these mock drafts and stuff, it just made too much sense. Delpit is a game changer if he plays well. And he was the Jim Thorpe winner last year. People have really given him a hard time. I watched a lot of LSU last year. Delpit stood out to me. Delpit's a good player. I think Delpit could make a big impact here. Now, I thought the same thing for Greedy Williams last year, and Greedy Williams stunk. So, it's a big transition from the pros to college. So we'll have to see what happens. But Delpit is a player that can make plays, that can do things on the field. That it has. I mean, look, he has been in big games. He won a national championship. He played through injury last year. Delpit, to me, made a lot of sense. Going back to what Jared's saying for linebacker, and I will say this is one thing that's shocking about Taki. They drafted 2 linebackers last year. So you can only draft so many linebackers in back-to-back drafts. So I'm not going to go too crazy on that.
No, you're right. You're right. And the verdict's still out on Mac.
And by the way, Mac played well against the pass. And by the way, that's not a bad in the NFL right now. That's a good thing. Mac struggled, I thought, up against the run, but you know what?
Which is what this move with Jacob Phillips at linebacker is supposed to help out with.
He's a tackler.
Yeah.
You heard, if everybody heard the comments about Jacob Phillips, if he's going to play significant minutes, which we'll have to see, Jacob Phillips does one thing: he tackles. He has a nose for tackling people.
Which ironically is the one knock on Delpit, if I'm not mistaken.
Delpit does. And by the way, I want to go to this with every.
But he already said, you can all go to hell. I'll take care of that.
Here's what I've learned about all these things in the secondary. And I'll say the same thing for Delpit. The days of there's only so many rare Ronnie Lotts, Palomalos. There's only so many rare guys like that. So Delpit, to me, not tackling well. Look, he's a ball hawk. He does some things. He covers. He plays a good center field. The Browns did not have that presence. Sorry, they didn't. TJ Carey, some of these other guys.
No, it would have. It was where it was Denzel Ward. That. And
Denzel does a good job covering one-on-one. And Greedy Williams has got to improve.
Well, and there's nothing to say that he won't come down with the ball next season.
Right. Just Delpit being around, flying around the ball, to me makes me feel good. It gives a secondary a chance. And again, I like Denzel Ward a lot. I'm very high on him. But I'm the opposite about Greedy. Greedy's going to have to really improve this year, in my opinion. So to get someone like Delpit, it's an LSU combination. I always think that things help. Jordan Elliott, to me, the next pick made a lot of sense. Elliott comes in at a time where next year, Richardson and Larry Gunjobi's contract's up next year. You're getting people in place to come replace guys who may not be there much longer. Richardson, we'll have to see. But Ogunjobi coming back is going to – with all the contracts the Browns have coming up, I think Ogunjobi coming back is going to be hard. Unless Ogunjobi takes a hometown discount like Higgins did.
Yeah.
So drafting an Elliott makes a lot of sense because you know why? He doesn't have to start. In fact, he's not even a first-layer backup because he got that guy from Cincinnati coming in.
Yeah.
So Elliott being there makes a lot of sense. I don't have any problem with that. Harrison Bryant, if we all watched the Ohio State game, he tore that team up. He was the tight end of the year for college football forever that's worth. He came into a college as an offensive lineman, so he does know how to block. I'm fine with this. Harrison Bryant is a good upside. It's a good 4th-round pick. I know nothing about Nick Harris, so I won't even comment. And then going back to Harrison Bryant too, I think Harrison Bryant has an opportunity. It's kind of like Jordan Cameron. Other guys we've drafted in the past, it's like just take a flyer on a guy who can catch the ball, and he did catch the ball off of Florida Atlantic. That's the thing I like. Harrison got a lot of balls thrown to him at Florida Atlantic. That's good. You want to see guys who can play and not just raw athletic ability sometimes.
Well, you can already see with the Browns already have a backfield that looks like it. I mean, we knew last year it should be destroying the rest of the NFL. Should have been. They loaded up on fullbacks. They've got a plethora now. As many quality tight ends at this point as you could ever ask for, or tight ends in general. Andy, these things all still point to, again, this new crowd doing everything they can to make sure that Baker has a shot. Period.
Baker, we're gonna get to him. We're gonna get to him because that's what it's all about. And by the way, gives the Browns Stefanski and those guys a chance to win.
Yeah, you're going to talk about multiple tight ends on the field almost all the time.
All the time, interchangeable. It's going to be look, folks. I don't want to do this because I don't want to shit on guys. The tight ends we didn't even have tight ends last year. Those guys stunk. Those guys, they're nice guys probably, but some of those things we were seeing last year, I made a big point, and you can listen to prior podcasts. It was a joke. Some of these guys should not have been playing in these big spots, and they were making big plays in big spots. And by the way, they couldn't make big plays. They couldn't do anything in a big spot. So to Jared's point, Hooper, Bryant the rookie, and Njoku, well, at least we're not relying on Njoku now. You got Hooper, and we got Bryant pushing Njoku. So if Njoku's ever going to make it, this is his year.
Yeah.
So that's why all this makes sense. They're not just saying, like we did last year, let's just put Njoku out there and see what happens. Our tight ends last year stunk. They did. We all knew it. These were guys who couldn't make big plays in big spots, but they had to go to them because that's all we had. And Njoku was injured last year. And when he was on the field, he was terrible. So, but again, if that happens this year to Njoku, it's not a big deal. Hooper's your starter. It's good. And you have a young kid named Bryant ready to come up. And so if you do want to do two tight end sets, which is something Stefanski talked about, it's talked about at length, well, now it doesn't sound crazy because you have three options. It gives the Browns options. Now, let's talk about the option number. Because the 6th round draft pick was the most exciting thing.
And before you jump into that, having Nick Harris sitting down and not having to start either is also a good thing.
Smart.
Yeah, you're going to need
center.
Exactly.
And look,
because again, what Browns, and forgive me if I'm mistaken, who did they move to center? Like, they don't have a true center.
J.C. Treader is your center, and he's great.
Right.
But J.C. Treader's on the back end of his career. To get Nick Harris going, at a certain point, Treader's not going to be here much longer. And what I mean that's like 3 years. He might be here for a year or two more. 3 or 4 years is asking a lot from J.C. Treader.
Where else am I thinking on that line?
So,
all right.
But anyways, my point being is like you have now someone in place who can take J.C. Treader's spot when he's about ready to hit the tail end of his career.
Yeah.
Again, it's like Jordan Elliott. You're putting draft picks later in the draft that actually fill needs for down the road and gives them time to develop. And by the way, if they aren't the players you thought they were, it's not going to hurt the Browns in 2020. Nick Harris and Jordan Elliott being bust, which is a good possibility of happening, it's not going to hurt the Browns. It's okay. But if they hit on these guys, they have depth now in areas where they can help themselves and flip the roster. So when they have to pay people like Baker, like Nick Chubb, like Myles Garrett, they can maybe have a chance of doing it because they have people who are ready to come and start for the Browns, a.k.a. like the Patriots, a.k.a. like these other teams you see from the Ravens at times. You hear about these things. Now the Browns are trying to do it. Okay, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Love this pick. Let's get to the player first, and let's get to the other shit. Peoples-Jones played an offense which was unwatchable. Shea Patterson is not a good college quarterback. He had tough balls thrown to him. Donovan Peoples-Jones, when you watch him run, he's an athlete. He looks the part. I say that.
He's 6'2", 6'3". How tall is he?
He had one of the best combines.
He ran a 4.4.
Yeah, and Donovan Peoples-Jones also did a smart thing. He was hanging around guys like Landry. And I'm sure Landry, and by the way, smart on Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's getting probably people's ears like, hey, this Donovan Peoples-Jones guy is not bad. It's pretty. So for me, who did like Jared Judy a lot, that's neither here nor there now. I love the fact that the Browns realized they need to get other wide receivers in the process going. And again, Donovan Peoples-Jones fits in the thing I just talked about with Harris and with Jordan Elliott. You're putting guys.
That was the other point that I was going to bring up about Harris. And when I was talking about center and moving folks around, it had to do with Treader's injury.
He's had a lot of injury, and by the way, God bless him.
He was injured with the Packers, and he's played through he had to
high ankle sprain
with the Browns. So
J.C. Treader, I don't think has missed more than 1 or 2 games, but that guy's been hurt. I mean, every week when we do our fall, it's like who's on the questionable J.C. Treader? Who's questionable J.C. Treader? He was on that list a lot. And again, he's coming towards
he's coming towards the end of his career.
So to have Harris, Jordan Elliott, because again, Ogunjobi's a question mark. It's not that he's not playing well. You just don't know if you can bring Larry back. So to have guys in place, and again, for how much I did want OBJ on this team this year, and I did. Let's be realistic. 2 or 3 years down the road, that may not make sense. So to have
I don't know.
people,
Barry says he sees him there for long term.
we'll see. But we'll see. We'll see. But all that to
A
be
little
said,
bit of politic in there, maybe.
right? But Peoples-Jones made a lot of sense. I thought that was the seal of the draft. I was so excited about that. Now, I want to get to something that rankled me a lot.
Yeah.
Me
as well.
And I'm surprised it went as far as it did. This stuff about not drafting Michigan players, we're Browns fans, has got to stop. He went to the University of Michigan. It's okay. Steve Everett is one of the best Browns alum you'll ever see. He defends the brown and orange better than anybody I know on social media. He lives and dies with the Browns. He went to Michigan. Leroy Horde went to Michigan. I know we weren't the biggest of fans, but we had Brandon Edwards at times. He was a Michigan guy. We've had many Michigan players come through. Peppers recently. And I know we weren't all the biggest Peppers guys, but he played for Michigan. You cannot have this where not all fans, but a small portion of fans get upset because a player went to a school like Michigan. It's wrong. It's not cool. It should not fucking matter. This guy, Peoples-Jones, wanted to come to Cleveland. He wanted to play for the Browns. Are you trying to tell me you wouldn't take Elvis Grbac back in the 90s, who was a Clevelander, who played for Michigan? Yes, you would. You wouldn't take Tom Brady. You wouldn't take Desmond Howard. You would take these guys, all these guys. Everybody's got to calm down. Not everybody. People who are upset about this, I think, need to really take a deep breath.
Andy,
yes,
I know. I'm wearing my Ohio State Buckeyes hat right now. I'm wearing it right now, as I do almost every day of my life. And I think that these people need to find a hobby or they need to call someone they haven't talked to in a long time, because there's obviously some anger and some stress in their lives that they are projecting because of a young kid being picked up from a college that they don't like. It's the most ridiculous shit when you break down exactly what it is that people are getting pissed about. It is stupid.
Silly. I don't like the U. I will take players from the U all the time.
Right. And let's just be real. I get it. Listen, I don't often say the M word. I call them that team up north. I play the game. It's tradition. That's the rival in that league, in the NCAA, in college football. Yes, I never want Ohio State to lose to that team up north. Never. I don't even care if it ruins the rival. I don't care. At this point, the rivalry is pretty shit as it is anyways. Browns fans should know this because that's how it's been with the Steelers. On the opposite side of things.
The Cooper years in the 90s have reversed itself so well in that rivalry. Go ahead.
Right. But at the end of the day, if you don't know how to draw a line, delineate the differences, recognize that it's sports, recognize that these are kids just trying to get an education and be successful in their lives, and maybe, if they're lucky, get drafted into the NFL. How could you ever hate on any of them?
Silly. Again,
stop being a fucking dickhead.
Silly.
Donovan Peoples-Jones, you are welcome in my house anytime. I will cook you dinner. I will high five you when you score touchdowns. I will cheer for you on television when you're wearing that brown and orange. And I'm still a Buckeyes fan.
He was so excited to come to Cleveland. He is hanging out with Landry. He wanted to be a part of this.
Who wouldn't?
In some of the reaction, and one from a media member was appalling.
Yeah,
it was a very small portion, but that stuff needs to stop. Yeah, I'm going to get off my soapbox. I hope this shit.
You're right, and you know what? I will say that too. That again, reminder. I know we do a podcast. We're not broadcast on local Cleveland sports radio, but neither of us take for granted the power of the microphone. It's something that has been instilled in me. It was instilled in me decades ago that when you have the microphone, you have there's a lot of power to the words that you say when you are being broadcast to an audience, to a group of people. So you need to be mindful of what you say and how you say it. Yep. Disregard that we say fuck all the time on the show. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not what I mean. I mean that the power of influence that you may have because of this microphone, you need to pay attention to that, because what that person did that you're speaking of was try to, in a sense, whether that person wanted to or not, influence the audience that listens to, respects, and trusts that person. And you're taking advantage of that by acting like an asshat over a kid who just got drafted into the NFL for the team that you love from the college that you don't like. Dumb. Just pure stupidity.
He sent a tweet to the direct University of Michigan.
Oh yeah, added it. At.
So it was
or whatever.
Yeah, it was very, very poor choice. And then 48 hours later, he came back down to earth. And he's not a bad guy, but he had a bad day.
Not a bad guy.
But a bad day. And for people who don't know, you can look it up. So I don't want to say his name. But anyways, that's that. I was excited by the whole draft. Let's get to the grades. I want to talk about one other thing, then we can start going to other things with the Browns.
Yeah.
Here's everyone I read, so I wrote them down. Kuiper Jr. B+, Pro Football Focus A+, Draft Wire A, MMQB B+, Chad Reuter at NFL.com A. If you combined all the scores, someone did this in a tabulation. The Browns were in the top 25 percentile in rankings for this kind of stuff, which we all know doesn't mean shit. Doesn't mean wins, doesn't mean anything else. But
no, it's just fun stuff. It's just the consensus is.
But it was a good, positive vibe.
Well, so are the ratings. So are the ratings too that we've talked about. Regarding Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati. Basically leading the way with those who are watching the draft.
No, they were championing the way. The only thing before we get into Stefanski and Barry comments and everything else, the only thing I don't think is a bad thing, but it's something I'm going to keep my eye on. And it's fine. It's good. It is unusual. There's a lot of LSU alums now on the team. Five. And 3 from the last 2 drafts. Mm-hmm. Greedy, Phillips, and now Delpit. I'm cool with that. I have no problem with that. I will say this, though. And these are all defensive guys, too, by the way. And then you throw on the other side Landry and OBJ, who are the wide receivers. But anyways, let's stick to what I'm saying here. There's a lot of LSU guys, which I'm cool. I'm glad, I'm happy with. I don't think there's a right or wrong here, because if you win games, no one cares.
Go Browns, GEAUX.
Exactly.
All day.
We tweeted it out. I did find that interesting, though, Jared. The Browns in the last 2 drafts have been very heavy LSU. Not the SEC thing, because that makes sense to me. The SEC is the best conference of football when it comes to talent. But I found the LSU thing intriguing. There's been a lot of LSU guys who are now on this roster. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's something that stuck out after the Phillips pickup. Because when they drafted Phillips, I'm like, that is now 5 guys on this team and 3 guys who played on the LSU team, because Greedy played on it as well, who are all coming. So there's a lot of LSU talent on the field. Can't wait to see him play. It's interesting. That's what I'll leave it as. Not good or bad. Interesting. A lot of LSU on the team.
Yeah, I know. And I also know that Browns fans can't stand when they see talented Buckeyes go on to succeed in either Pittsburgh or Baltimore. And I know that it probably kills a lot of people to see J.K. Dobbins heading to Baltimore. I know it puts a knot in the pit of my stomach. Not in the same way that people get angry and will hate on a person. I know how talented J.K. Dobbins is going to be. It's a bummer that we're going to have to face him now.
He's going to a team that runs the ball a lot. And
I know.
And look, I told Jared the same thing.
I get it.
As soon as the card got read for the Steelers and I heard Claypool's name, like,
yes.
Fucker. That makes so much sense. He's a
and
good
I actually,
player.
and there was a part of me that liked Claypool.
He's a good
coming
player.
to Cleveland. So
For people who don't know, I'm a huge Irish football fan, and I like Claypool a lot. I think he is the pro. That's another guy looks the part. He's a big guy. I thought that was a good draft pick. That stuff happens. All that to be said, and Barry kind of heightened on it. And this was the other comments that I think sometimes we throw away, but I won't throw them away today. Barry said after the draft, quote, "I love working with Kevin, just period." And you could tell he went on about other things that he really got along.
And that was another one of those comments that stood out to me regarding that stuff that I talked about earlier on emotional intelligence and emotional maturity.
On the same plane.
Is just that they are like, yep, gotcha.
This is the first time in a long time simpatico.
Long time. And where it doesn't feel like they're faking it.
No, it doesn't feel forced. I agree. I was going to use that term. It doesn't feel forced. Stefanski had a funny remark. He gave a great interview on KNR too on Tuesday. Tuesday would be the 28th. He said, ask me in 3 years if it was a successful draft. And I laughed out loud when I heard that. So even Stefanski said, yeah, it was a great draft. He goes, yeah, I called me 3 years. I mean, let's see. I don't know. We'll have to see how things played out. But he said nice things too. I don't know if it is.
Hey, the fact that he expects to be here 3 years from now means a lot to me.
It's a big day. It's a big day. It's a big day.
Wow,
boy, it's a big day.
You think you're going to be here in 3 years?
Woo.
All right.
Come
Best
on,
of luck to you, Kev.
Come on, AJCB in November. See how we think. But but anyways, now that was all good stuff. The other big thing that was I'm glad this was kind of the secondary story, but obviously Jared hit upon us. Now let's go back to it. All this was done for Baker. All these things are done now because we want to see 6 come back, right? So I guess Will's talked about this on KNR, quote, talking to Baker. Baker will be there for me. If I'm needing anything, bring some of that dog type attitude that you have from Alabama team. Just do whatever helps the team. And I think the big thing here with stuff like this is everything is being done to set up Baker and for Baker to be very successful. Another thing that kind of came out of this stuff was from Andrew Berry and Stefanski, quote, Andrew Berry on Baker, "I can assure you there's no one who's more focused and determined to put last year behind him and take a step forward than him," end quote. "We are excited about the environment that we've created around that position and in that room general. And I really do have and we expect Baker to have a fantastic year," end quote. That's from Andrew Berry on Golic and Wingo. And then and I think the other big thing that came out of this too, if I can find that quote, where is it? Oh, here we go. "I feel confident that we being the Browns and put him Baker. I feel confident that we are going to put Baker in the system we're implementing. We added some pieces to the offensive line of the ball, which can only help the development of a young quarterback. And then, like anything else, we're going to work our hardest with this kid. And then it's time to just make players rising to the occasion. I think Baker's going to do that, and Baker's done that over time, and I think he'll do it now." So that was from Stefanski. All these things were done to help Baker. And the one thing that I gotta say now is Kareem Hunt, Hollywood Higgins, all these things are really equating to things where 6 does have places and parts ready to go. Don't forget about 24, Nick Chubb. That's my only, and I don't think that's happening, but I will say that. We have a fantastic player in Nick Chubb. Hand him the ball off.
I don't think Nick Chubb is going to allow anybody to forget about Nick Chubb.
I'm going to shout that every day. Nick Chubb is a star to me in this league.
Well, here we go again. Did you buy a new jersey yet? Because I haven't bought mine yet.
I have not yet. No.
All right. If you get a new jersey and you get a player and don't put your own name on it, that's something that I've always done. Only because I'm tired of buying jerseys that have names on it that they're gone in a few years.
True.
Anyway, that's been my way of dealing with the last 20 years. It's just put my own name on it. I put my
Jeff Payne jersey.
I have all of my jerseys say Watson 13. My baseball number. Anyway, but if you do buy a jersey, who you buying? I mean, because for me, it's easily Nick Chubb. Period.
Yeah, Myles Garrett and Nick Chubb are pretty close.
Yeah, Myles Garrett too. I know.
And Baker, like all 3 of those guys. Actually, Landry.
I'm even holding off on Baker.
Yeah, Landry too. I like Landry a lot too. Those would be my guys.
If you had to pick a jersey based on who's going to be here, because you want to get some longevity out of it. And who isn't going to
I
disappoint?
guess it'd be Myles Garrett.
Yeah, Myles Garrett or Nick Chubb, right?
Yeah. Yep. I think Nick Chubb's a star. I think Nick Chubb is a star in this league. But this whole draft was done for 6. I'm excited for Baker. I think he has got. I mean, we talked about this last year, but we're kind of full. I Paul Flynn. By the way, for everybody who wants a good cocktail and it's 5:30, so it's happy hour somewhere, go to Bev Max. Hook up.
Bev
They
Max.
deliver anywhere. They're great. Hook them up. I get excited too. I get a little bit of excitement from Nick.
Yeah,
Chubb
he
too.
gets a little. Yep.
Chubby.
Thank Paul Flynn getting a little chub from Nick Chubb. Thank you for commenting on Facebook.
Yeah, I get a little chub from Nick Chubb. He's a good player. Look, I just think all these things make you feel excited. It makes you feel good. I think the other thing too that really came into play, Jared. We came on and said, do we keep Njoku? Do we keep Vernon? Right. All these things made sense now. It doesn't mean they're going to work out. It doesn't mean that they're going to be great Browns next year. But I got to be fair. All these things to me make sense. And I can't fault anybody if they make sense. I think the Browns have been put in the proper position. And the other thing that I do want to harp on, I love hearing all these guys, and Stefanski really hit this. They have talked about we are going to be on the edge of virtual online world. And you know what? In this pandemic, that's not a bad thing to hear.
No, you're right. And think about this. If you had to pick a regime to run things with online, dealing with technology, dealing with all of what is going on, analytics and ways to try to make your team better from a distance and remotely, do you want Dorsey and Freddie? Do you want? It's
amazing.
Do you want Farmer or do you want who do you want? No, I want these guys. I want these guys right now. Like
Holmgren in Seattle with flip flops. I can't believe I'm saying this. This whole D Podesta thing has worked out brilliantly. This whole thing is on.
See, I stayed out west, and now it all makes sense. It was all training to get.
It's all worked out. Look,
everything remotely.
I'm happy for the Browns. Jared alluded to it. The draft ratings were through the roof. 15.6 million. For the people didn't hear, usually the draft will range anywhere from like a 6 to an 8, and it doubled. 15.6 million viewers. Real quickly before we get on the Ohio numbers, I know next year in Cleveland's gonna be great. I'm so pumped up about it. I have to admit, the virtual reality of going into the GMs and coaches' lives was great.
Yes,
Pick a moment. O'Brien losing his shit because the IT didn't work for the Texans, to Bill Belichick's dog being on there.
The dog, or to Coach Tampa Bay. Jesus, where's the same hat I do? Wanted to coach for the Browns.
I can see his face. Arians.
Thank you, Bruce Arians. Like him chilling there, looking like a Boca Raton retiree. It was beautiful. It's everything that I want in my life.
I do think a little bit of that charm needs to come back next year.
Yeah,
I love that.
Well, even Goodell was approachable. He
better.
It was a way better look.
Better. Again, I think.
By the way, isn't taking a salary. I need to throw that out there too.
Yes. There needs to be some of this. And by the way, they raised all that money. So all that stuff's good stuff. So all that stuff really worked out. But again, I like the virtual draft of going in. By the way, Vrabel's mysterious shitter. How about this too?
More comments from Facebook.
Paul Flynn chiming in. Vrabel's mysterious shitter. How about two at one point? Well, what was the one I was watching? I was just dying laughing. There were people's kids, and they were trying to get on TV.
I missed it was Detroit and his son on the toilet. Did I miss that one with the Lions?
Wow, where was I? Man,
Jim Forrest on Facebook. I don't know why I don't remember that.
I would have remembered that. That would have been epic. But anyways, I like the virtual draft. I'm so excited it's coming to Cleveland next year. I think that's cool. They've got to think about ways of implementing some of those things with some of these GMs and coaches. I think the GMs and coaches being in isolated offices at home really work. And I would figure out ways to do that again. I really, really liked it.
There's definitely something that can be done with that. I will say that one thing that stood out regarding the draft so far for next year that I am glad about, and I don't know how you feel about it, is, and I was talking to a guy, apparently I live a block and a half away from another guy who's from the Cleveland area too, wearing one of his GV Art Cleveland that I love shirts as I was walking the dogs today.
That's cool.
Yeah, you can't ever go far without running into somebody, right? Well, anyways, we were talking about how they're going to hold the draft next year, and I was glad that it's not going to be down in the flats. When those rumors came out, I was thinking to myself, that feels claustrophobic to me. I love the flats for what the flats are, but I don't believe that's really how you highlight the city of Cleveland and the draft. I just didn't feel that. So
before you tell me, I know it's not a large area.
Well, I from what I've read now is it's going to be somewhere in between First Energy, the Rock Hall, and the rest of downtown. So.
Okay, that's cool. I know it's not a large area, but I'll tell you the area.
There's a lot more to do. Yeah, there
is. But I'll tell you the area I would go on, and it'd be hell to plan, but I would do it. That grassy knoll area in between the Rocket and Progressive. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
It's not big. It's not big enough. I know it's not. The logistics aren't there. And my gosh, with this kind of pandemic space.
Well, there's a handful of grassy knolls. You know, the one that's the hill that goes up and then you're looking out at the lake. You know what I'm talking about? Where what hotels are right there? There's a couple. I think is the Marriott right there. Anyways, up that graded hill that you take your dogs to go. You know what I'm talking about? It's kind of like a dog park area.
Yeah.
Anyways, and when you get to the top of it, you're overlooking the Rock Hall, First Energy Stadium, and the lake, and that's all backdrop, and it's centrally located right behind like 4th Street and all that stuff. I think that would be the perfect. It's like a big grassy knoll.
Yeah, I know you're talking.
It's right across gradually graded upward.
It's right across the street from the arcade. It's that new hotel. I think it's called the Drury.
I know the hotel that I stayed in is right around the corner. It's next to like a federal building or something.
It's where the parade ended. That area is right where the parade ended. Yeah, it
gorgeous
was right.
Spot, though. Gorgeous spot, overlooks everything.
That's another good one. All those, anyways. You know what, the Hall of Fame is good too. I'm excited for Cleveland to hit the ratings. And locally, Columbus was number 1, 16.7. Cleveland number 2, 15.9. Cincinnati 3 at 15.6. I've done this and I've seen this. Birmingham, Alabama is probably another city they always rate well. In anything with sports, especially football, Columbus and Cleveland always do really well.
Every time. And we know why Cincinnati was through the roof this year.
Well, because of Burrow, right? Yeah. So anyways, it was a big night. My wrap up for the Browns is this. You know, there's going to be a lot of things you're going to hear about. Oh, by the way, you know what? This is a good way to end it. So what's next for the Browns? Okay, they're going to do Stefanski said on KNR, they're doing virtual online classes during the week for 2 hours with the veterans, Monday through Thursday. So that's how they're communicating. They're basically doing a class every day for 2 hours. And then rookies are going to start coming on board on May 8th through 10th. That is obviously much later than normal, but what can you do? So they don't get implemented until the 8th. And then after the 10th, they will be folded into the veteran life. Monday through Thursday, veterans online classes virtual, 2 hours a day. So for people who are wondering, what are the Browns doing? I thought that was very cool. It was a great question by Rizzo, and I'm glad it gave a good visual to what's going on. And then the other big thing, too, is Stefanski hyped on. We are going to have multiple systems, a lot of looks. That he kept using that, and a marriage between the run and the pass. He's preached that before, but he really hammered that home. He is not going to be just one kind of offense.
He's looking at it in a sense of, and I think the last that even however the set is that the defense is on their toes. They don't know what's going to happen.
Yes.
And I think he looks at a lot of that as that whole idea of having multiple people in the backfield, multiple tight ends on the field at any time. That just will open things up.
He's a Swiss Army knife.
Allow them to set a lot up.
It's a Swiss Army knife attitude.
Yes.
We're going to bring out whatever we want to at any moment in time.
Great way to call
I really like how he sounds. Again, to recap everything for the Browns, from Higgins to the picking up an Njoku and Garrett to all these other things, this has been a very good spring and a pandemic time for the Browns. They have done a really nice job of making us feel good as fans. They did a great job with the draft from that perspective. The Browns feel loaded, to be honest with you, which you hate saying because this team only won 6 games last year. And the year before that, they only won 7. But they do feel like they're going to big places, if we're being truthful. Now the time is there. You can tell the one thing, Jared, I'm not hearing is pumping the brakes. Stefanski talked about the offenses they want to do that's interchangeable, an equal marriage between the pass and run. And the other big thing he really talked about, again, which he hammered and Barry hammered, they want to become the best virtual team in the league. They want to use this time and make it an advantage for the Browns, not disadvantage. The only thing tricky during this whole period and on this whole scheduling, it'll be interesting to see when Stefanski can get to Cleveland. It sounds like they're in mid-move from what I can tell. He's going to try to get here at some point, but obviously with everything that's going on in the world, when that is unsure. All that to be said, that's the Browns. It's hard, Jared, hard to get negative. Hard to find stuff that makes you worried.
I'm mad that Peoples-Jones played for Michigan.
I'm going to tweet the Michigan. I'm going to tweet the Michigan account. I'm going to
at the university because I'm angry at who the Browns drafted. All right, I don't know. Whatever.
It's just so stupid. So stupid. So stupid. All right, it's a small portion, so there you go. So that is your Browns. Let's move on to MLB and NBA. Let's go to Indians MLB first. So the latest Bob Nightingale, who did an article previously as well, talked about the latest discussions going around in baseball. This came out yesterday. That's Tuesday, the 28th. The biggest new thing that came out is now there seem to be wiping away the idea of grapefruit and cactus leagues. It sounds like now they're going to go all division only with teams playing in regions and time zones only. So let's do a rundown. I mean, they're basically saying no, there's no ALNL. I think that is the one thing, no matter how this breaks out, that's going to be gone. But here's the possibility that seems like this one's gaining steam at the moment. Playing at home stadiums with no fans right now. Here we go. Yankees, Mets, Red Sox, Nationals, Orioles, Phillies, Pirates, Blue Jays, Rays, Marlins is your East. Your West, Dodgers, Angels, Giants, Athletics, Padres, Diamondbacks, Rockies, Rangers, Astros, Mariners, and then your Central, your Cleveland Indians, Cubs, White Sox, Brewers, Cardinals, Royals, Reds, Twins, Braves, Tigers.
Okay.
And the big thing that they're talking about is that they don't go outside of the division. They'll all be playing inside that category in that time zone region.
Okay.
One official says it's all coming together. I'm very optimistic. So it sounds like this is the new thing that's been brought along. It sounds like it's gaining steam now.
Okay.
So as you sit and ponder, I want to get to a couple of things. I think you're going to go down a road.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're not. So here's a couple other things now. The hurdles. So this is the good news. You can see it. It's on the horizon, right? Here's the questions. We brought it up last time, and Jared made a note of it, and now we can actually talk about it. The MLBPA and MLB might need to go back to the negotiating table and really figure out how much money players are going to make. There was an agreement that was made. It sounded like it was all pretty good. Everybody's feeling hunky-dory. But I think the reality of the situation now and the actual bottom lines of owners are hitting the reality. And there is now some very questionable pushback, not questionable as in who's right or wrong, but pushback saying, hey, maybe we're going to need to trim this a little bit more and renegotiate. And Tony Clark.
Maybe owners can look at this as an investment in revitalizing the game of baseball and Major League Baseball so that future revenues increase over time because of what they are doing now, considering there's a fucking global pandemic. Sorry, that's all. That's all.
Baseball has a really hard time understanding that sometimes in life you just got to negotiate and figure shit out. The MLB Players Association, which is a great organization, great union, sometimes gets really stunk in cement, and so do the owners, and they need to work together here as one.
Okay, so they need to come together and work as one because Tony Clark's statement that negotiation's over. I get it, Tony, but come on, like this is a unique thing. Come back to the table, figure stuff out. So. That is the big thing that came out of this too, though. Buster only talked about it a lot in the earlier part of the week. It did pour a little bit of grayness on some sunshine. We'll have to see what happens. But again, this is where the momentum's going. This is where things seem to be going for baseball. There's no real Indians news, but here's some quotes in case you want to hear from some people. Frankie Lindor, quote, "It seems like for a long time, people didn't really like how much technology is growing. Now technology is going to come in handy.
Love it.
Now you're going to call your neighbors, call your family members, people that you haven't talked to in years, and make sure everything's okay and make sure they have the right resources," end quote. Carl Willis, "This would have been a great stock to buy had we known about Zoom." Everybody knows about Zoom now. It's Carl Willis joking with Rosie on an interview, which is funny. Shane Bieber's working out this guy, Kyle Nelson. He's an Indians relief prospect. That was very smart, by the way. Bieber saying, "Hey, not only should I quarantine myself, I want to bring another guy with me so I can play catch and actually do long toss and bullpen sessions." Very, very, very smart by Shane Bieber.
I like the idea of pairing up. They need to. Yes.
The other big story outside of that stuff, I mean, I think, before we get to the last thing and then we'll go into NBA and then testing, the big thing with that I did like, though, Jared, that, you and I talked about offline and online, this idea of playing the Dodgers and, and all these different teams and the Angels a lot more. I do like the idea of keeping it regionalized in home parks. And even though we won't see the Yankees and Red Sox and some of those other teams we like to play the Astros, it would be cool to have it all in one region. And we do get to play you get to play all the teams that are around you. And by the way, the Cubs will be played a lot. That'll be fun. And it doesn't take the Indians too much out of their element because they still play the Twins a lot. They still play the White Sox a lot. They play the Royals a lot. So at the end of the day, you're just adding five new teams.
Let me ask you this, because I don't remember whether we talked about this part. You're saying that these are the teams they're playing. Are they still doing it in the format of only doing it in Florida and Arizona? Or are they talking about doing it in home state? Okay. So again, that's what I thought. Fans. And we're going to have to, I'm saving parts of my opinion for later.
Yes.
I will say this though. I get why they're doing that. It works out better for the players. Just taking the ease of time change off the table for those guys in itself is big. I think.
I heard a big,
especially after whatever road trip. You got long road trip out west. You come back east. Any of those things. We always know that the Indians, when they go out west, it's always a roller coaster.
It's brutal. And the thing is too that family members really spoke up upon. It's like we want them to play, but we don't want them. You know, for example, let's say
their voices are heard a lot more now.
Yeah,
they're elevated at this point.
Right. Like even someone like let's just say the Cubs too. The Cubs aren't based in Arizona. They're gonna play in Arizona the whole year. I mean, that's not close, especially during a pandemic. So all that kind of stuff makes sense. I do think there was a lot of reality check and seeing
the other is for TV, Andy. For television purposes, if they're the revenue is all coming from television. We are not talking about filing fans into the stadiums.
No
what I do think we have to worry about is fans gathering at team parking lots for autographs. Those are things that I think need to be addressed. Stuff like that.
Yeah, that'll be the next step. And that's and by the way, they're gonna have anyways. Yes, I agree. The biggest thing too that I liked out of this though, Jared, is you can tell they're progressing when it comes to, well, if we get the season, here's where they're going. So I think we're going to bring up a bigger hurdle here in a second. But the other good story from the Indians, they are still paying full-time employees through June 30th.
Yeah.
The Indians are one of the few teams that are guaranteeing full-time workers their salaries through June. So, for the Dolans, and that was such silly stuff he did during the sports awards. And there's some other stuff he did with Lindor in interviews that weren't the best. All right, let's tip our cap to the Dolans.
Yeah, no, and I think we've been good at that. We've held account when needed, and we have given praise when deserved. So absolutely, that's a big move on their part.
Huge.
He's not whining about losing money on a year that they go to the playoffs. This is a big, legitimate move to take care of people that he employs and that the family employs. So
through June 30th.
Thank you.
Through June 30th.
Yes.
That's a big play. I just think the Indians need to be highlighted and maybe clapped That is cool shit right now.
It really
and that's
is.
stuff you like to really see. And I love the Indians anyways, but I love this even more. That was nice to hear. NBA, there's been some stories coming out there about them trying to open up practice facilities a bit. There's been a lot of rumors and stuff. The latest is now they're going to try to get the facilities open on May 8th. Today's the 29th, so they still have some days to figure stuff out. The bigger thing that people should take out of this, you can read the story about it, so I'm not going to go too much into detail. The bigger thing with the facilities is it's just a facility, okay? It means nothing about games. It means nothing about fans coming out. All they're saying is, hey, players, you want to come in and work out, you can come into these facilities, you can work out and do stuff, because in some of these states, you're legally allowed to do so.
Right.
So they want players that are going to do that stuff to come being housed in an area where they know and feel good about. That's the thing there when it comes to these open facilities. The big thing about the NBA is they're trying to get a little bit of momentum. This is just an opinion, a gut reaction. They still, by far, compared to MLB and NFL, have a ways to go. The NBA is still, this is a long road back. Just being honest, it's a long road back. And so the big thing that Jared and I are going to talk into now, which was spurred on by a wonderful interview done by Brian Windhurst on KNR. Wendy and I talk personally, and I love Wendy the person. I love Wendy the reporter. And he got brought on to KNR to ask about, well, what's going to happen to the NBA? And Wendy really did something which I thought was very smart and shows you why he is who he is. The biggest thing he mentioned is he goes, until I hear the word testing and how testing is going to be done and how testing is going to be influenced, I think all this stuff is just banter. And I think he's right. I think the biggest thing we need to start hearing about is the testing stuff.
So regarding all of this, regarding testing, let's start with all that. I mean, this gives me opportunity to open up to not only sports, but give my thoughts on everything, on the overall attitude regarding what's going on throughout the country and around the world. And this is where it gets difficult, because we have come to a point in, at least in this country, where your opinion about the virus is politicized. Your opinion about how things open, how things start, how things begin, whether it's dangerous, whether it's not, it's politicized. So I'm going to give my version that I am trying not to involve politics in. But I know that there are those who will take it and say and apply their own politics to it. We've got to get that out of the way. That's just something that is inherently an issue with what's going on in the climate of this country today, period. Point blank.
Very polarizing stuff right now.
Now that I said that,
polarizing.
Here's what I think. I think that if we would have walked into this all with the mentality of, hey, you know what? In your head, because we have that saying, right? Hope for the best, plan for the worst. Well, I feel like we have been a plan for the best and hope for the best type of country at this point. And I feel like that mentality is forcing us to make these overarching decisions or having these overarching thoughts regarding everything. When each state and each curve that has been flattened or is hoping to be flattened or has been flattened for a while, each state and how close people live together and how often they gather and how whether they're living in a rural area or whether they're living in a city, all of these factors, all of these nuances, those have an effect on how quickly a certain area can open and a certain area can't. You can't just put an overarching open up everything. That's just not going to work. And I think most people understand that. At the same time here, you want to be calculated, you want to be careful. But what I think is happening more often than not is with a lot of this, no matter where we are trying to force things. We are trying to force round pegs into square holes. We are trying to rush things to open where we probably shouldn't rush them. And I understand the hope and the need for sports. Between sports and between getting back to work and those things in this country, they are more important to all of us than probably most anything else regarding what we're going through situationally here. I don't think that approaching it with the idea of forcing things to open now is the smart thing. I think that if we would have looked at it like, hey, this could last 18 months. So how do we build a plan? I think I waited too long to get to this point. How do we make a plan to deal with the next 18 months? Because it might take that long. 18 months. I know I've run into people that have reacted to me angrily over even saying that. Even though all I'm saying is prepare for the worst.
Correct.
We might not have, things that help mitigate this virus, nor a vaccine for a very long time. We know that it transmits to others very easily and asymptomatically, where there are silent carriers that scare the living shit out of me because I've got asthma and a heart condition. You think I'm rushing to do anything? I need to see things. I need proof. I need something tangible. I need, like you said, testing, because there is a possibility that my wife and I have already had it.
Right.
We were isolated for a month here. We need testing. We need the antibody tests, and then we also need to just plan for the worst. So if I'm being honest and I'm being real with my opinion of whether sports is going to open or start this year, and I mean any sports, I'm going to say as of right now, and I know I'm applying what I said not to an overarching thought, but if I had to bet on whether any sports, any professional sports were going to begin before next year, I'd say we're only at 25%, if that. Any Major League Baseball, football, college football, basketball, any of it. Because Andy, I know I've overrun my time without letting you talk here, but I have one more thing to say. When we're talking about these players and we're talking about them stepping back onto the court or onto the field, they are also taking their lives into risk, or risking their lives in a sense, possibly, because they are also putting their hopes and their trust in the players that are next to them or on the opposite side of the field, that they are taking the same precautions to prevent infection that they are. Because if one of them gets it, because inherently of their proximity to one another, they'll all get the shit. They have to be careful about that, and they have to trust each other, and they have to know. So there we go. There's my rant about all of this.
Here's my thing. The biggest thing that I've come to the conclusion of is we've never been through this. Okay. Yes. So there's a lot of times where we go through things and people make quick judgments positively and negatively. So the big thing I've been trying to do is I want to stay in the middle. I just don't know. But I thought today was a great day. This Fauci came out with today with something that's helping treatment. And that's a big
Resveratrol. Yep.
And that's a big step forward. That's a big, big day. And I think the other big thing, to what Wendy alluded to what you're touching on there, the testing is really where it starts and stops. Because once you get testing and you figure out a system for that is accepted in society and is accepted for the leagues, that's your first door back in. Okay. Once you get that shit settled, then you can start doing these other things about what Nightingale was talking about in his articles and all these different things. The one thing that also plays a part of this too, which I think Wendy did a great job of, so I'm not going to take his idea. He said it and he's right. There's a huge difference right now between playing a sport and having fans go to a sport. Right now, I think the big hurdle is playing sports. Fans going to games, I think it's going to be tough. Sports being played, I don't think it's crazy. But I think fans going to events, I think that may, I don't know how realistic that is right now.
I don't think sports being played is crazy, but it not being crazy doesn't mean that I think it's feasible, right?
Right.
Because you're talking about a lot of guarantees. Andy, you brought up something else, and I'm going to hopefully tee off here. These tests and what people will, the PR spin of needing the tests. Okay, let's say the tests are available. Let's say these are tests that we can even believe, because Lord knows there's been a bunch of tests, 30 to possibly 40%. that have been shown to show false negatives. Are these tests reliable? And if they are, and if these leagues get them, Andy, what is that going to do opinion-wise, PR-wise, for those who still,
society
like
itself,
me, can't get a fucking test?
Society itself. I think you just hit the big thing. That's why these things are still in the infancy stages of planning, because owners they're not silly. They're not naive. They know if they do something like that, and by the way, they should be prepared for that, and they should get pushed back, because there are a lot of people like Jared and like others, and even like myself, who's got kids, who transfers a lot of things back and forth. I just want to make sure I'm safe and my kids are safe. Okay. So that's big, and that's a big key deal. So I think that's the kind of stuff that's being debated about on a level that we don't see and talk about in the sports pages, that I do think should be slowly brought into our brains. I don't want to piss on what Nightingale did. I love the article, but Wendy's right. Unless testing's being talked about, really all this is just banter, because really that's where it starts and stops, because you have to make sure everybody's safe, the facility's safe and ready to go. And by the way, I do think it can happen. Fans going to games, I think, is a whole. I agree with Wendy. That's like we're on Earth. That's Mars. That's Mercury. I can't even get there yet. Let's just try to find out.
Yeah, I don't even. I mean, I'll be honest. I don't even have any comments for that. Like, that's just a simple no. Like, what are you talking about?
Right. It really is. The last thing on this,
that is 18 to 24 months, point blank period. There's no fucking chance in hell.
Right. The other thing I'm hearing a lot of rumors about from people I talk to in college football and whatever else, I'm hearing more and more from people who work in these schools and universities on Division I levels. The split season's becoming more and more of a topic. NFL seems to be more of a pushing back the season. From what I'm hearing in college ranks, they're really talking about a fall and spring season. That is definitely being bantered about, because it isn't going to kill the virus, but obviously when the weather's warmer, it's not going to be as prevalent. And when it gets colder, it's going to come back. So that's the biggest discussion right now is, will that help and will that kick off the season? I heard Feinbaum is hearing the same stuff as he was on the other day, and he heard the same things I'm hearing. I am hearing that too, where the split season could be the way to go for college football. NFL sounds like it's just going to be a big push back. Time will tell. The biggest thing with anything when it comes to NCAA is, will they open up campuses and universities? That's step one. And that goes back to the whole testing thing. And it's going to be interesting to see if universities and colleges can open. Because
and even beyond that, also, there's been some good news as of late regarding NCAA and if you play sports in the NCAA and being able to make money. But I think one of the issues too is that there's a lot of schools that are losing a ton of revenue right now. There are schools that are afraid of all of these things, closing down departments, restructuring, reorganizing, and there's going to be a lot of players that are going to lose scholarships possibly. That's another huge issue regarding the trickle down effects of what we're dealing with regarding this virus. And not even to mention, Andy, and I think we talked about it last week, players that are how well are these kids taking care of themselves? How well are they able to take care of themselves when they are back home? Many of them not in the best situations regarding their living conditions, regarding the amount of money that their families have, regarding the food that they can eat, regarding the training that they can do, and keeping themselves ready to play. I mean, this is all stuff mentally and physically. If you've got these kids that might lose grandparents, we already know that this disease is hurting the African-American community in a more prevalent way. And a lot of these players that come from those communities might be losing family members, might be watching family members get sick. There's a lot going on regarding college sports, even beyond a split season, period.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where I'll stop there, because I think, all these different things are great. It's exciting. We love sports.
Right.
There's some things that really need to be figured out. Yeah. And once that, and by the way, we keep hearing about this, and you keep hearing about all these testing and how there's going to be saliva tests. And that's obviously a big change forward. For people who haven't seen, there's Rex Chapman retweeted a video with someone getting the COVID-19 test. It's eye-opening. It's very, very, very eye-opening. So to watch that and just knowing that that's where we need to get to right now. Again, those are guys and girls in hazmat suits doing things that take time. It's not quick, proper swabs, proper techniques. Can we get something that's so easy where you can just get saliva onto some sort of test, put it through the test, and get it checked out? We can right now. We're hoping. And by the way, they might be doing tests and trials we don't know about. But right now, that's we're at with all that stuff. Anyways, I thought Brian Windhurst, kudos to him, brought up a great point. And I think he made all these stories are great. And I love all these stories. But that, at the end of the day, is the crux. Once testing gets figured out, not just sports-wise, nationwide, worldwide, then you can start opening up these other doors and stuff. Yeah. And by the way, even those doors are fan-less. I don't see fans getting in the stands right away.
No.
The Indians.
And I'm good with that. Andy, you're good with that? I'm good with that.
This is a much bigger thing.
I would love to be able to even just watch a game of some. That's all.
I would be all over it
if they can make it happen safely.
They can make it happen soon. The other big thing. So we tapped the cap to the Indians. Let's tip the cap to the Cavs. Mm-hmm. They are also paying workers. They are one of the, again, another one of the organizations. The Cavs, they have been paying not just full-time. They've been paying vendors. They have been paying food and beverage. The Cavs and the Indians, tip of the cap. Yeah. They have really hit it out of the park. I want to make sure they get their kudos. There's an article about in USA Today. The Cavs and the Indians are being featured on a national level for how organizations should be running. Kudos to Cleveland again. Not a surprise, by the way. Not a surprise. I was warmed my heart to read both those stories.
Don't you feel like the city of Cleveland has really gotten a lot of good press ever since the All-Star game?
Yes.
Really? Just on a good trend up city-wise?
Yes. It's that. Let's end the show on this because I think the NCAA story we can go on to, and that might be a different podcast too. So I'll save the NCAA for a different day, and we're almost going 90 minutes. So here's the last thing.
We knew it was going to be a long show. We're wrapping up.
I told Jared, this is going to be a long fucking show. There's a lot of shit to talk about. So anyways, the last thing is, look, I've been watching it, and people know me. I can't stand Michael Jordan. I respect Michael Jordan, but I can't fucking stand the man. Okay.
Yep, same.
He broke my heart. I act like a
same. I'm not watching. Flat out, full disclosure, I'm not watching the documentary.
So I watched all of them. So
Andy likes torturing himself. I don't.
I also know Jason Healy directed it, and so I need to watch it for Jason's sake. So there's that too. I'm also, even though I still this day hate, I've mentioned this, but I'll mention it again. I hate the Bulls. The Bulls drive me fucking crazy. I don't like the Bulls. I will never cheer for the Bulls. They are like the Broncos. It doesn't matter that they haven't played in the playoffs a long time. I will never like the Bulls again. Never. All that to be said, the latest documentary, which I think has been very good. Show 4 was excellent. I thought that story really hummed with Phil Jackson in the background. In show 3, they did get into the shot. And the biggest thing that came out of there for us as Cleveland sports fans as we are, was the Harper comments. And Harper said on camera, no B-roll, straight up bite, no breaks, no breaths. We're up by 1, and I said, I got MJ, Harper explained. Coach tells me I'm going to put Elo on MJ. And I'm like, whatever, fuck this bullshit. And for people who have seen this out, it was just that direct and just that animated. We all remember the shots, and we're not going to relive that. Harper's comments, though, were biting. I found them to be very, very, very raw and very real. And I'm glad he explained it. Yeah, Jordan kissed my ass, too.
Tim on Facebook chiming in.
Yeah, I can't stand Jordan. Can't stand him. Still this day. I had a mental breakdown 10 years old. My mom was so upset with me. I cried.
I know.
I cried when Jordan did that shot. I was a mess. Unconsolable. Shaking. So mad. Shaking. It was because of, and by the way, in true Jordan fashion, hits the shot, fist pumps, all this stuff going on. It just drove me to such anger and pain. I was never angry at Elo. I really wasn't. I was never angry at Elo or any of that stuff. because we all felt like Elo. We all felt like he'd just been shot in the back and just falling down the ground. But those comments from Harper, I found to be interesting because shortly after that, Harper was traded. And I got to be honest, when you hear those kind of comments, all of a sudden I go, Harper being traded to the Clippers now is starting to make a little more sense.
Right.
Because you could tell he really felt that way then, and he still feels that way now.
Well, you know what? I mean, here's the deal. Cavs win that game. They still don't win that series, do they?
No. Well,
this ain't a LeBron down 3-1 turnaround, right? I mean,
it's an elimination game, so the Cavs would have moved on just like the Bulls did, right? But if we're being fair, would they have beaten the Lakers? Probably not. Would they have beat?
Go ahead. Anyways, I've had an entire show where my brain has not worked correctly, so just go on.
Would they have beaten the Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals? Probably been tough. The one thing that the shot did, though, and we'll get into more about it, it reminded me how much I loved the 80s, late 80s, early 90s Cavs. I had a Mark Price poster in my room. I loved Hot Rod Williams. I was a big Larry Nance, Elo guy. I loved all those teams. I was such a big Cavs fan. I loved how the way they played. You could tell they loved each other, and they were such a team. And the video that was online by the Cavs.com Cavaliers website was great. Watching those guys sit and talk about something that wasn't positive, but really brought up about why we love that team. And that's the one thing I do want to bring out of such a negative. Those Cavs teams were really great. Kevin Love tweeted about it. You heard some other remarks. Those Cavs teams were really, really, really
Andy, growing up, I would listen to those games in my room. I remember my little stereo that I had gotten, my little cassette player, and I would listen to the Cavs growing up. And the next time that I actually listened to the Cavaliers on the radio, LeBron James era, that's it. I mean, there was something that magical about those teams and the LeBron era teams that that you could listen to that. I wasn't always a big, let's put it this way. I guess I'm leaving that off. I'm not big on listening to basketball games on the radio.
Well, right? It's a visual sport.
We all love listening to Indians games because it's
different sport.
Tom Hamilton.
Sport.
And I can live with listening to Browns games, even though, I love listening to Jim Donovan, but at the same time, different sport. Listening to basketball on the radio, I tried to do it before LeBron came back. I tried to, because I lived out west in Vegas, and I'd be in my car, and it was a lot easier to just listen to Cavs games, and I would try to tune in and listen to how Kyrie was developing. I tried to listen to those late 90s Cavs teams, early 2000s. I tried to do it, but I'm telling you what, there was something special about that era and listening on the radio, and with the LeBron era, the second LeBron era, and listening on the radio. That's how it was for me, at least.
Yeah, I just remember rooting. I like Lenny Wilkins. I really loved those teams. I really bonded to them.
Rod Williams, Lenny Wilkins.
They're in that cycle for me. 80s Browns, 90s Indians, modern day Indians, modern day Cavs.
Larry Nance, Mark Price.
They're in those teams. Those players were in me. And Elo's a nice man.
Yeah.
Such a good man. Yes. And I guess the bigger thing I just want to bring out all this is, and Brad Doherty too, as I know Doherty's in the video. But I just want to say again, it was jaw-dropping to hear Harper's comments. I never knew he felt that way. And it finally closed the book. It was like that one moment as a Cavs fan. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to put two and two together. So now the Clippers trade is starting to make more sense. Because if Harper's that bitter today in 2019, 2020, how bitter was he in 1989 when the play actually happened? He came off that way. It's such a shame. The other thing too that drives me crazy in sports, and I want to bring this up quickly. Jordan was that fucking good, and that's why it fucking was so annoying. Okay, look, Nance said it. Everybody said it. They double teamed Jordan. Okay, he was that good. Harper could have guarded him. I still think he makes a shot. I really do think Jordan was on that level. Okay, it sucked. The only reason
he was an asshole.
He was an asshole.
Sorry.
His fist. Fuck that guy. To this day, I will never root for these teams. Broncos. These are teams that don't have rivalry. Broncos, Marlins, Bulls. I don't root for these
I put the
teams.
Braves. I put the Braves in there.
That's fine. I don't have as much as for that, but I do for the Marlins. I do because they trade their whole fucking team after that season.
I know.
That drove me insane. But Jordan, again, I'm not naive. I love LeBron, and LeBron has done much more for a city, even with Jordan Chicago. But Jordan was so good, and he just did things that was like when you watch that documentary again, it reminded me, and I knew it, but it's like that guy was so fucking money in big spots and in big times in games, and it sucked.
Hey, how about that Browns draft, Andy? How about that Browns draft, brother?
We're going to go Super Bowl. We're going Super Bowl.
Super Bowl. No fans. Listen, the Indians are going to win a World Series with no fans in the stadium.
Saliva test?
Andy, we are.
By the way, how great would that be?
It counts. Somebody brought that up, and I was going to ask you, do you think it still counts?
What?
If it's a weird shortened season where they have all these rules.
Okay, ready for this? Yeah. Ask Liverpool, who's hanging on to a thread trying to play their EPL season, if that championship doesn't count, because they're going to win the championship when they start playing games again over in EPL, okay? If the Indians win a championship, 100 games, playing the Cubs, Reds, White Sox, fuck yeah, it counts.
Without their 10th man?
Fucking counts.
It counts.
Counts.
Yes, thank you.
Counts.
Because somebody asked me that. If somebody brought that up, I don't remember what. It wasn't Paul on the last show, was it? Paul, was that you? Anyway, it fucking counts.
Counts. Shit counts.
Yes. Yes, it counts.
Baby.
Yes.
Just win, baby.
And if I got to wait until 2022 for the parade, I don't give a shit. 2020, I'll wait. I'll be there.
But I would advise, even though we don't like Jordan, I would advise to watch a documentary series. I know it's very good. I'm telling you. I even though I can't stand, I don't
watch Tiger King, so I'm not watching.
Not everybody. I will just say this though, it's been interesting, and show 4 was great, and the Rodman story, which everybody's talked about, the wild Dennis Rodman coming up to Phil and Michael, be like, I need a vacation. I'm gonna go to Vegas.
I'm gonna go to Vegas.
2 days.
I saw it. Yeah, he's the one guy that I have a strange. I always liked Dennis.
Hell of a rebounder. When you watched him interview, and he talked about how he knew angles and how he knew how to flick his wrist to do things with the ball, that is again, you can just roll out the red carpet. You know, Rodman will be there day one, making big plays. Yeah, he was that good too.
Rodman. I have a soft spot. I know he's eccentric. I know he's got his issues. But I strangely empathize with that very broken man because there have been times where he has been as down and out as you could ever get, and as on top of the world as you could ever get. He's a man of extremes, and that's Dennis Rodman. And of course, I don't know how you feel about this, but I've always seen a little Dennis Rodman in JR too.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's for Here's the thing about that 2016 Cavs team. They were so likable, but to your point, and you watch, look, they are not the Bulls. I'm not saying that, but you know what's interesting? You really look at the Cavs and you look at teams like the Bulls, LeBron, Jordan. Okay, they equate each other out. Pippen, obviously he was so unique, but we had Kyrie, and Kyrie's really good. Mm-hmm. You had Kevin Love. They have guys like Horace Grant. It's not crazy to say like those two teams were that far off. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of matchups, whatever, everything else. So we won't do in this podcast. But to your point, Jared, J.R. Smith, he had some big shots in Game 6 at home, made some big plays. Tristan Thompson never gets remembered, but that guy made rebounds and defensive plays. And for everything that was done for the block and the shot, Kevin Love's defense on Steph Curry was great down the stretch.
Tell me that didn't. Again, that took so many demons away for that because
thank you.
Because that was the shot too. That was the shot part too.
LBJ, baby. I will always love LeBron.
Smack it down.
I will always love LeBron. pumped about the Browns. I'll keep watching The Last Dance for us on this show. I will. I love Jason Hare.
Maybe I'll give in. Maybe I'll run out of things to watch.
I love Jason Hare, so I got to text Jason later. 'Cause I love Show 4, so I'll keep watching that. Baseball and everything else, we did our testing thing. The NCAA we'll get into next. If there's no big developments, I'm gonna go back and do the fun staking task of doing season reviews 2 and 3. That'll be in the month of May. By then, I get the vibe. By June, I think there'll be some more news coming back. So that's kind of what's ahead for this show and for sports. I don't think May's going to be having much going on, but in June, PGA starts, which they haven't pushed back on that yet. It does sound like baseball's aiming for June. We'll have to see how the testing goes. Testing too for the PGA Tour, by the way. But you're starting to head down that road. So in the month of May, unless something, you got the Hollywood Higgins stuff or whatever news, it'll be season reviews 2 and 3. We'll probably do at some point a podcast just to wrap up the month of May for things that are going on here and there and some thoughts, but that's what's going on ahead. And it's always ironic in a time where there's not a lot going on in sports. The city of Cleveland has been the focal point, whether it's ratings, whether it's the Cavs and Indians paying their people, whether it's the people applauding around the league for how great the NFL draft was for the Browns this year. For everything, the city of Cleveland, again, great week.
Yep.
Wonderful week. It's a big winter week in a week that no games were played. A big winning week.
Well, that's usually how it goes in the city of Cleveland. Big winter week when games aren't played.
Games aren't even played. It's amazing. I love this. I love this.
The city's winning when the teams are off the field. That's
It's amazing. In a week where if you had told me that at the beginning of the show 2 weeks ago, like, nah, but it's been amazing. The positive, good vibes at a time where it's hard. It's great to see.
Well, hey, shout out to everyone commenting and watching the show today live on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks a lot for participating. I've been thinking about this a lot. Sorry if we don't get to all your comments, but we do read them and react after the show. So keep that stuff coming. Follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Cleveland and Beyond, and on Twitter at CLE and Beyond, at CLE and Beyond. You can also shoot us an email, Andy and Jared at gmail.com, Andy and Jared at gmail.com. Don't forget, we are a part of Waiting for Next Year. Check them out. Original Cleveland sports reporting at waitingfornextyear.com. Taki is a linebacker. He is not a safety. I am not dumb. I have had, and game 5 is an elimination game, not a 7-game series. My brain has been all over the place today, and I don't know why or what happened, but it is what it is. Don't forget, hey, check this out. Want to order some booze? You're on the West Coast. You want some easy booze brought to you because you don't want to drive out and go to your local liquor store because you don't even think wearing a mask is safe enough for you? Cool. Check out bevmax.com and tell them Andy and Jared sent you. Tell them Phil sent you, and get yourself maybe some wine or maybe what was that whiskey or I'm sorry
Cleveland Underground.
Cleveland. That's what it was called.
I believe so.
Yeah, and also see again, my brain stopped working again for some reason. I caught myself. No, not that one. I caught myself saying Phil, and I said I meant Paul. Like this is a day where I just throw in the towel. I go to bed.
By the way, in fairness, that's a 4-letter name, and there's a P and an L.
No, I doesn't matter. That's terrible. I get off the phone, or I get off the show.
We've had a good reaction to Paul Flynn. He's coming back.
Yes.
So last thoughts again. Big positive for the Browns heading into the virtual world. I love how they're thinking that way too. You can tell from these interviews and stuff. It was great to see all these different things too happen with the draft where it worked out. Peoples-Jones was a great way to end the draft. We talked about the Michigan things. I won't do that again. Great to see Hollywood Higgins back.
Yep.
Great to see Myles Garrett get his 5th year. We knew he would. And Njoku got his 5th year. That's fine. Vernon, all these guys we talked about this year. Baker Mayfield reaching out to people. All cool stuff. Wills is ready to roll. He knows what he has to do. He's got a lot of pressure, but he seems to be ready to handle it and ready to rock and roll. By the way, there is no backup plan right now. Wills is the guy. Wills is your left tackle. So that's going to have to work out one way or the other. From everything we can see, so far so good. And then, the MLB, NBA, testing. Brian Windhurst, Wendy hit it out of the park today with KNR. That is the right attitude for that stuff. All that to be said, it's fun to read the Nightingale articles. It's fun to read some of these other things going on. And finally, holy shit, Ron Harper's still pissed he didn't guard Jordan. I mean, pissed.
I'm pissed. It's 7 weeks. I've been stuck in my house. I'm going out back. I'm going to go plug in my electric rototiller that came from Amazon a couple days ago. Keep doing that yard work, folks. Keep doing them home projects. Paint those rooms, put in them floors, do all that stuff safely and with your social distancing and your masks and all that good stuff. Because I know, Lord knows, everyone's either ordering their stuff online or taking their own trips over to Lowe's and doing a lot of things at home right now. I know I am, because I hope to sell this house when all is said and done and move my ass back home so that Andy and I can go and check out the draft. That's the goal, and that's what we're focused on at the moment.
Yes.
He's Andy Billman. I'm Jared Watson. Andy and Jared, Cleveland and beyond. Thanks for tuning in. Take care. Talk again soon. Wash your hands. Social distance. Love you all. Don't force things to hold.